Today we've got an interesting story about some pro-revenge that set off against the OP, and they're okay with it? We'll get into that one shortly, but first, privacy doesn't matter because they're kids. My wife has a cousin who works at a private elementary school as either a teacher or a TA, either because her stories seem to change often. She's what I would consider a pick-me girl, who always interrupts other people's conversations with, "that reminds me of that one time I," kind of thing. When there's no conversation, she would fill the silence with her life stories instead. One thing is, she keeps telling these stories from her workplace, about kids and what outrageous things they did at school, or what kind of medical conditions they have and whether or not she believes them, with the kids' names and all. Occasionally, she also tells stories about the kids' parents, who got divorced, once again with names and other identifiable information. Not only it gets annoying after some time, who gives a crap what happens at your work, but it also raises red flags with my wife and I. I've worked, and my wife is working in universities, and we're well familiar with FERPA and student privacy laws, the USA. So these stories are huge breaches of confidentiality and wildly inappropriate in our eyes. At the latest family gathering in a restaurant, this cousin once again went on and on with her work stories about kids and their parents. Not only that, she was so loud that other tables started looking at us. My wife, not able to stand it anymore, interrupted and said her behaviors were inappropriate and unprofessional. The cousin, probably having been confronted about this for the first time ever, got flustered and defensive. She went from, "oh, they're second graders, it doesn't matter," to cursing and berating my wife. Not wanting to make a scene, we got up and left. Knowing the cousin was a blabbermouth and probably would continue telling her work stories to other unsuspecting listeners, I decided to wait a few weeks. Once it feels like enough time has passed, I reached out to the private school where she worked and submitted an anonymous complaint. I listed all the things she talked about, including kids and parents' name, as far back as I could remember. I also listed the specific points of the law where I believed violations occurred. I never got a response back from the school, but just a couple of weeks ago, we heard that the cousin is now touring around in her camper van. Could be she no longer has a job. Could be summer break. Who knows? They say loose lips sink ships. Or I guess in this case, they lose you your job. Potentially. We never got confirmation on that, but I'm willing to guess that that is going to catch up with her sooner rather than later. Nutmegger23 replied, "As a student teacher many years ago, the privacy laws we have today didn't exist, but talking about students to anyone, anywhere, that wasn't a school or parent related was strongly discouraged. To emphasize this, a mentor told me how a teacher was in a restaurant, think Friendly's or Denny's, seated in a booth, telling a story about a student, and using the student's name. Turned out someone in that student's family was seated right behind that teacher, heard everything, and rightfully complained. I'm now retired, but I never forgot that story." Also, hey everybody, my name is Brendan, and if you guys enjoy these pro-revenge videos, it'd be amazing if you like the video. Comment it down below if you're listening to our podcast. Now then, our next story is Petty to My Cousin. First-time poster, and English isn't my first language. This revenge started 2 years ago, during the first birthday of my cousin's son, who decided to organize it on Grandmother's Day. I was very angry that she chose this day, and I declined the invitation. She had also invited my mother, who went. So my daughter could not see her grandmother for this day and give her the gift. My cousin's birthday is just before my husband's. She also decided to organize it right on my husband's day, so I had to say again that I would not come. I favor my husband. You would think that my cousin understood and would change the invitation days for the following year, but no, she chose the same days again this year. I decided not to go, and not to send her messages for her birthday anymore. I had my son last winter. My sister had given all her baby clothes to her, so she asked to give them to me. I would have given them back to her after I didn't need them. She said yes, but never answered in time. She gave back a little from what she had, and it was too late. My son couldn't fit them. I found out she was 1 month pregnant at the time, and that's why she didn't want to give them back. She's expecting a girl. I did everything to give her nothing. I gave all to other people, and I plan to never help her. Her brother, my cousin, just had a child, and I congratulated him. She's also going to give birth in November. I plan to pretend she doesn't exist and continue to wish everyone else in her family happy birthday or congratulations, except her. Okay, so I'm kind of struggling to unravel exactly what the purpose of this is. It sounds like there's just some mutual pettiness and jealousy going around, and OP here just needed to vent in not their native language. So, yay, thank you for sharing. Our next story is I tattled to their moms. When I was working as a server, some people I knew vaguely decided to dine and dash at the restaurant I worked at. High school friends of friends. It wasn't my table, but I was close with the server. Some restaurants make servers pay for walkouts for, quote, not paying enough attention to their tables. When anybody I vaguely know walks into an establishment I work at, I always clock it and avoid them. The town we live in is not a small city in Michigan, but I've gone to 3 different school districts, so the chances of me running into someone I know is very high. Bonus points if I'm friends on Facebook with them. But since they decided to dine and dash, I quickly went to Facebook and looked them up. Then I messaged them and said, hey, I know you dined and dashed, and I need you to come back and pay for your meal. But when they left me on red, I found their moms and messaged them. Their moms thanked me for letting them know. I don't really remember if the bill ended up getting taken care of because it was so long ago, but I do remember giving my server friend the validation of knowing I tattled to their moms. I like that. You try to hold them accountable, and when they refuse to hold themselves accountable, you gotta call mommy, and mommy will take care of that. Rasky Bukowski commented, around where in Michigan? I've lived in 3 different cities there. I hope your managers put the face of the dashers and ban them. A bar I used to go to did that, and OP replied to this, unfortunately, I'd rather not get more specific than Michigan, and we refused to serve them the next 4 times they tried to eat there, until sometime later they came back and the host plus server didn't know them, sat them, and didn't notice until they were eating, but I warned their server and pulled up a chair to their table until they paid. Our next story is, throw a stink bomb in my shop, I'll ruin your night. Sometime between 2005 and 2006, when I was on active duty in the Navy, we had a new shop lead petty officer, LPO, come aboard. He was cool, joked around with us, seemed like a decent replacement for our old shop supervisor that got new orders back stateside. Everything seemed fine until he got yanked out of our shop to become the division admin bench. After that, the shop was beneath him. He did random stuff like volunteering the entire shop for watch duty or idiot duty stuff, throwing us under the bus, petty stuff basically. Anyways, one day in Homeport, he opens the door, not a hatch, and tossed in 2 stink bombs. Mind you, this guy's a bit older, say 37 to 38 years old, so doing something like this is typical for a sailor, but not for an older human. He got lucky, and half of the bombs did its job, stunk up the shop, making us vacate the place for 30 minutes till it cleared out. Unfortunately for him, 1 didn't break. I came back to the shop and found this gem on the floor. I quickly stuck into my coveralls pocket for Operation Petty Revenge. I kept it classified and didn't tell a soul what I was going to do. In fact, I didn't know either. I'm more of a spur-of-the-moment type of guy. I forget the time frame as to when I enacted my petty revenge, but it was finally soon after. I had the pleasure of having to duty with this person once a week. So every week I'd have to spend a full 24 hours of duty with him and others on the ship. Operation Petty Revenge was a go. Knowing he was standing watch and wouldn't be back to bed until midnight, I decided to ruin the rest of his night by cracking open the stink bomb, emptying the smelly liquid onto his pillow and blankets. So there I was, laying in my rack no more than 12 inches away from him, separated by only a blue cloth curtain, waiting for HT1 to come to his rack. He does his normal routine, gets undressed, grabs clean clothes and his shower supplies, and heads off the shower, not knowing what waits for his head when it hits the pillow. He gets down in the head, bathroom, and does his final steps before sliding into the middle rack. He slides into it, lays his head down for no less than 2 seconds before I hear, "Oh, what the freak, man?" By this time, I've rolled over, so if he did pull my curtain open, he'd assume I was asleep, not knowing of what went down and laying there with a big old smirk on my face. Remember, I have to keep the operation secret. Lives are in danger. So there he was, standing next to his rack, cursing up a storm, and I guess trying to figure out who got him back. Little did he know the culprit was within arm's reach. He finished up his hissy fit and left the berthing for the night where I slept peacefully, knowing he got what he deserved. He never did this crap again, and I don't really recall much ever coming from him again. I see him on Facebook still as a suggestion. I still get a laugh from it. Wherever you are, HD1, payback is a bench. I think it's safe to say that you won that battle and sealed the deal on the war. It's over. Move on. Rasky Bukowski replied, "You're nicer than me. I'd have put it in the armpits area inside his shirt." Our next story is dental catalogs. My neighbors decided to block the intersection in light of mortars. Yes, the aerial kind that use tubes as launchers, on the 4th of July for over an hour. Next level illegal in my state. They wouldn't stop, even when asked. We even mentioned that it's illegal that other neighbors were hosing down their cars and watering their yards. I also expressed concern about all the dead, dry brush they cut down and abandoned in their yard a month earlier. One of the homeowners got 1 foot from my face and yelled, "Freak you!" As we were walking away, the police showed up and informed the neighbors that what they had going on was a jailable offense, not just a citation, but jail just for possessing them. They were ticked that they had to clean up, but did it. Just so you know, the homeowners were missing many teeth, and I was feeling especially petty and signed them up for dental supply catalogs. I felt kind of bad about it until I and other neighbors found a ton of firework debris in the bushes, on dry grass and under trees. It's been really dry here, and there's a burn ban. They could have started fires, so freak them. If you're willing to put the health and safety of others at risk just because you're lazy, you definitely deserve a little revenge. So, good one, good one. Big Bob C. replied, "A couple of years ago, a neighbor's house got torched by some fireworks. Unfortunately, the culprits were not located." Our next story is, petty revenge is best served stinky. This happened back when I was in high school, 2009 or so. For years, we had an awesome school bus driver, nicest lady you'd ever meet, all of middle school and first year of high school. But in sophomore year, she got moved to a different route and was replaced with this witch who clearly hated being there and was constantly screeching at the most minor of things. I always had gum on me and often shared, and I tossed a piece to my friend in the seat across from me, one of those small Trident ones with white paper wrapper, 2 feet at the most, and I've done this for years. The witch sees this in her rearview mirror and decides to punish me by separating me from my friends for 2 weeks, having to sit at the front of the bus. This annoyed me, to say the least. So what do? Well, my parents had a garden, and they had a few chive plants growing in it. Super pungent onion smell. So every morning, I would grab some, and as soon as I took my seat, I would cram that wad into my mouth and chew it like gum, making sure to breathe through my mouth. Then would spit it out after we arrived, popped a few pieces of gum, and continue on. The first day or two, she just gave me a glare. The third, she asked me to not eat whatever I was eating. The fourth, she called an administrator on me, saying I was being defiant and maliciously trying to annoy her. He asked me to stop, and I basically just responded, "You can't tell me what I can or cannot eat." Literally nothing he can do. Send me to detention for maliciously eating something? Ridiculous. He basically told her his hands were tied, and he couldn't actually punish me for my diet choices, and went on his way. I was back with my buddies the next week. Time Improvement 6653 replied, "I wish I'd known in school that I had the ability to tell authority figures to take a flying F at a rolling donut, as my dad would say. I was way too obedient. Till I peed my pants in class deliberately to teach my 5th grade tyrant a lesson in her policy on bathroom privileges. We didn't have assigned seating on our school bus, but I imagine a bunch of my schoolmates would have staged a revolt if that bench Debbie had tried to enforce one." Our next story is, former boss disputed work history 6 months after I left, so I blew up his phone with spam. A few months ago, I was working at a corporate job and had a very significant death in the family. My grandfather that I needed to take time off to go handle. I needed to help with the estate and honestly just grieve. We were very, very close. I asked my manager to use emergency PTO and it was denied. I asked to go on FMLA instead and it was also denied, saying that grandparents don't qualify. I told him I wouldn't be able to come in for at least a couple of weeks while I flew down to Florida to attend the funeral and help with the estate. They told me that if I did that, I would be terminated. So they terminated me and even had the gall to offer me 2 weeks of severance in exchange for signing an NDA, a gag order, and an indemnity clause, which means I wouldn't be able to sue them. I wouldn't be able to talk smack about them to others or online. You get the idea. Of course, I refused. That conversation took place on August 1st. On my LinkedIn profile, I listed that I worked there from my start date to the beginning of August. The company dated my termination for the 31st of July. They said they had to do with benefits or something. Fast forward to January. I was up early with my 6-week-old newborn. I got a LinkedIn notification that my former manager viewed my profile. A few minutes later, I got an email from LinkedIn that my employment at that company was being disputed. He disputed the difference between July 31st and August 1st. LinkedIn ignored my dispute of the report and removed the company experience from my profile entirely. Not to mention that when I did repost the experience, it would no longer be verified by LinkedIn because I would have to verify through a company email address, which I no longer had. The absolute gall of this guy, and seriously, you're thinking about me 6, almost 7 months later? So I found his home address online. I had his personal cell phone number in my phone, and I also found his personal and work email address. I signed him up for as much spam as I possibly could find. Not just that, I went to every moving company and real estate agency in the area asking to be put in contact with an agent saying that I was looking for a house for $800,000 and moving companies to give quotes for a cross-country move. I gave those websites every contact information I had for him. Something that would really excite anyone getting that kind of sales lead. A former coworker in the same department told me that his phone was blowing up for days, both his work and personal cell. His role was client-facing, so he couldn't just ignore phone calls. I don't know if he ever figured out that it was me who did that, but those calls would have started pouring in within an hour of his report to LinkedIn. Screw that guy. Yeah, I feel like this is the least that you can do. If he's clearly going out of his way to kind of drag you down into the mud, you can inconvenience him, annoy him in this regard. Surely he's able to put 2 and 2 together and realize who's causing this, but it's still funny nonetheless. Tremenda Karucha replied, "It's wild how someone could hold a grudge for months over something so petty, but I guess that's just the kind of person they are. Probably still getting calls from random companies thinking they're a hot lead. What's the worst thing your ex-employer ever did to you after you left?" An OP replied to this, "They reported to my next employer during the background check that I was terminated for misconduct, yet marked as rehire eligible. Well, that didn't impact me getting into my current role. Sure that it both didn't help and might still look bad in the future." Our next story is business cards? Yours haven't come in yet. I had a coworker once who was the absolute worst. We worked at a retail commission sales job and he was constantly stealing my customers' sales by quite literally stepping in between me and my customer or trying to shove his way onto the cash register while I was ringing people out. He also smelled awful and was very bad at the job, which is why he had to resort to stealing my sales. I switched companies, and somehow this stinky jerk managed to get a job at the exact same place. I couldn't get away. His behavior continued, but management shut it down, as it wasn't just me he was working alongside of. He managed to pee off the entire team. The industry we worked in at the time was cellular, and this was before the advent of cloud storage, so if people wanted to transfer things besides contracts off a phone and onto a new one, they would need an SD card or a computer/iTunes. We had a machine that would do contacts and photos, but this was a very temperamental and would frequently miss large chunks of data. So if someone was trading in their phone, they would need to leave and come back to complete the sale. I would say about half of folks would need to leave and come back, and if you weren't there to grab them, you better hope Stinky wouldn't snake your sale. Management instituted a rule that these return sales were to go to whatever reps card they had, so if you forgot to give them a card, it was free game. Cards were stapled to their quote they would bring back in. When I started, I immediately asked them to order cards for me. So I had cards, but Stinky Jerk didn't, and he never asked anyone to order them for him. Instead of asking for his own, he would just cross out our name and write his. However, they were glossy and pen didn't stick well, so I can't read the name because it was 90% rubbed off. I guess I'll use the original rep on the card sales code. Everyone at the store was ticked at him for being pushy, dishonest, and smelling awful. So I was not the only person who employed this plausibly deniable tactic. About a month later, I was popping into our back room to grab more of my cards, and Stinky called out, "Hey, can you grab me some of yours too?" I sighed and climbed up to the shelf they were on, and what did I see but Stinky's box of cards? Sure thing, I told him. I moved his box of cards so the front wasn't visible and stashed it in the back where no one would see it. After months of him losing the return sales, he got wise and finally asked the manager for cards. He was shocked when they said they came in months ago, and there they were, on the shelf. What a jerk, what a meanie. Go take a shower, dude. Tremenda Carucha replied, "It's pretty wild how someone could be so obvious about taking what isn't theirs and then act surprised when others finally catch on, especially in an environment where everyone's already fed up with their behavior." And OP replied to this, "I honestly think he may have been on the spectrum because it was like he legitimately didn't understand why people were upset with him, or his malodorous scent. If you called him out about either thing, he would go, 'Oh, okay, then keep doing it.' Like he didn't realize that we wanted him to stop being pushy or wash himself. We finally figured out the main source of stink was this ratty pair of shoes he wore, and the manager went out immediately and bought him a pair of Adidas with the condition that the old ones get burned." Our next story is, coworker brags about free time? I have a coworker that posts TikToks about how much free time they have at work, or how they have had a slow day at work accompanied with their arts and crafts projects they're doing with their work time instead. Normally I wouldn't give a freak what someone posts about, but we've never had a slow moment at work, let alone a slow day. This person constantly is lazy in their role and doesn't do things properly, when they do things at all. Our team is fully remote and our manager is too busy/disconnected from the team to care. My petty revenge is anonymously sending screenshots and links to the company compliance department. No outcome yet. The rules of snitching don't apply on the job, when I'm busting my butt and you're watercoloring all day. Yeah, I can't see how this is ever a good idea. No matter what it is you're trying to share about your job behind the scenes, definitely don't share yeah, my job is slow and I'm not doing anything and I can just mess around. That will absolutely come full circle. Jerry, not Tom, commented, "Keep sending those screenshots and links. Send them up your chain of command. Send them to HR. Send them to the freaking CEO. You'll eventually find someone who cares enough to put this person on a performance improvement or can them all together." Chalave replied, "Fully agree. If they're posting that crap publicly while you're drowning in work, they deserve whatever's coming. No guilt needed. The real jerk move would be letting them keep getting paid to paint while you do all the heavy lifting." Our next story is, my brother said anxiety is a TikTok trend. About a year ago, I casually mentioned I'd had a rough mental health week, and my brother rolled his eyes and said, "Everyone's anxious these days. It's just trendy now because of TikTok." I stopped talking to him about my mental health after that. I let him believe whatever helped him sleep at night. Last month, he called me around midnight, barely coherent. He said his chest is tight, his heart was racing, and he couldn't catch his breath. He was convinced he was about to die. I recognized the signs immediately. I stayed on the phone with him, talked him through some grounding exercises, and helped him breathe until the episode passed. The next morning, I sent him a little gift, a care package with herbal tea, a journal, and a weighted blanket, all labeled with cute cards that read, "Welcome to the trend. Influencer tier unlocked. This season's anxiety starter pack." He didn't say anything, but the next time he called, he whispered, "I think of you an apology." Sometimes the pettiest revenge is giving people the empathy they never gave you and branding it like a lifestyle they mocked. I completely agree, and I wish that more people would do this. Respond to things like this with kindness instead of multiplying the pettiness factor and feeding into negativity. Amazing job, OP. Amazing. Locked in a Room replied, "I'm glad he admitted he was wrong and apologized. That shows real strength of character and emotional maturity. Let him know so, and let that work its way through his thought process. Good on you both." Our next story is, a very simple but petty revenge against a disrespectful roommate. Had been living in an apartment for the past 6 months with 2 roommates, one of whom is a serious twit who's nothing but rude and disrespectful to me and our other roommate, and was even reported to management several times for purposely misusing the air conditioning, as in maliciously purposely turning it down to the point where the system could have frozen up. Earlier today, my mom and I went to the apartment to get the rest of my things moved out, and we got inside to see that the disrespectful roommate was not there, presumably moving her stuff to wherever she was moving to because her bedroom door was open and her room had been emptied out. She wasn't fully moved out yet because the door was unlocked when I got there, and she had a load of clothes in the dryer. I know the clothes were hers because 1, she did laundry multiple times every week, and 2, The other roommate was at work and would never start a laundry load if she wasn't going to be home for the next several hours. So I said to my mom that the dryer ought to be turned off. I would have gladly done it myself since it was my suggestion, but my mom took the initiative to do it. Amazingly enough, the disrespectful roommate hadn't yet returned before my mom and I left, so we also put the kitchen garbage can that she had stuffed her sheets into her room. Enjoy having to redry your laundry when you return, you little biatch, courtesy of a 50-year-old lady, as you called me. For the record, I'm nowhere near 50 years old. I mean, this is funny and all, but how do you find yourself in a living situation with someone that you just are so diametrically opposed with? What happened? Were you forced to live together? Is this college? Are you assigned roommates? I need more deets. Pervert Author 69 replied, "You should have put a roll of toilet paper in with her clothes and turned dryer back on Christmas snow in July, and it'll take her months to get it out of her clothes." Agitated Basket 7778 replied, "Oh, for the days of using punch computer cards, and you could go several key punch machines and gather as many chads as you could carry. Then you could dump them in whatever other place you wanted, like an obnoxious roommate's laundry, or backpack, or hat, or... yeah." Our next story is petty revenge against me, and I deserved it. I used to work as a buyer at a large company. One time, my boss had me looking for product that we needed custom made and rushed. It was a $110,000 spend. So I reached out to my suppliers and had a couple respond saying it could be done. One representative, named Ricky, did a whole bunch of work for this and worked hand in hand with me to get the product designed and have samples made, which helped a lot for our marketing team. The other rep, they did some work, but nothing crazy, and had a sample made out of lesser quality and same price. And then my boss decided to choose which supplier we go with, and he chose the supplier that didn't do that much because they had 3-day faster delivery time, despite me recommending to go with Ricky's company. And so I had to break the bad news to Ricky. She was mad and decided to no longer work with our company, which I understand. Anyway, that was 6 years ago, and to this day, I still get a ton of spam calls and texts, at least once a day, and sometimes 3+ for a few months at a time. A few of them always address me as Ricky. They started coming in mass soon after I told Ricky we'd be going with another company. I've blocked hundreds of numbers and even paid for one of those subscriptions to have them erase my data from spam callers, and it didn't help. And the company my boss decided to work with, they were nearly 3 weeks late on delivery. Wild Memoir replied, "Yeah, you didn't deserve it. Your boss is the real villain here. You did everything you could to make him pick the right choice, but he was stupid and didn't. And Ricky is kind of a villain too. Why would you retaliate against an employee who's only doing their job? Her work on that product was probably great, but maybe the company dodged a bullet in the long run with her, looking at how immature she is." Our next story is, the postman always rings twice. Around 15 years ago, I worked in an office with a guy who had a laser printer installed in his office because he needed it. If anyone sent jobs to his printer, he would chew them out, even though we only had one other laser printer and it was on the other side of the office. He was an obnoxious jerk and universally not liked. We discovered the need for the laser printer. He was stealing stuff on eBay and was printing mailing labels on the printer. I had to drop off a ream of printer paper on the table with his printer and noticed an eBay mailing label. He was in a meeting, so I took it to a copier and quickly made a copy before putting his label back in the printer tray. I then used it to mail a box of pens to the recipient and went to the post office to submit it. I was back in the office before his meeting was over. When he posted his package, using the same shipping label, it would be returned to him, and he would have to pay for another shipping label. Plus, the delivery arrived late and eBay would ding him. Never mentioned anything at work because he was breaking rules to run his eBay business there. Over the next 6 months, I did this 3 more times. I'm pretty sure he had no idea how that was happening. This is hilarious, but also I didn't realize that eBay was still a thing. Funny story, nonetheless. Tennessee Vols replied, LOL, I would have shipped empty boxes, boxes with rocks, boxes with used socks, and any other odds weird things I could find laying around my house. Our next story is killing them with kindness. A few years ago, I had a very big argument with my sister. The story is far too long to post, but it's something that was building since we were kids. She always treated me very badly, but I always kept it amicable for the family. But this time it went too far, and we had a massive blowout on our family's group chat. Anyway, we ignored each other for some time after that, but finally had to appear face to face at a family gathering, which happened to be a few weeks after my birthday. Now, I should explain, I hate my birthday and wouldn't care if someone didn't want to buy me a present, as I get very uncomfortable receiving them. But that birthday, my sister rocks up with a present and a card for me. A small box of cheap chocolates and a card, both with the prices still on them. The chocolates are about £2 and the card about £25. Now, if that's all someone can afford to buy or even all someone wants to spend, I have zero issue with that whatsoever. But the fact she left the prices on and the smirk on her face let me know it was a deliberate dig. She's the spiteful type, and I just knew. So her birthday comes around a couple of months later, and I immediately thought about how I should handle it. Could I find a cheaper box of chocolate and a cheaper card to leave the prices on? But then I remembered a quote my mom used to say a lot, "Unalive them with kindness." So I went out and bought a moderately expensive and very thoughtful gift that I knew she would love, and I bought the most expensive card I could find, which was about £5. I didn't leave the price on the gift as I thought that was a little, and the thoughtfulness of it was enough, but I did leave the price on the card. That smug smirk on her face when she gave me my present was nowhere to be seen, replaced by sheer shock and embarrassment. We still haven't talked about it years later, but the pettiness definitely stopped. Yep, killing them with kindness undefeated, and if you're lucky, you make them feel a little bit guilty as well. Red Bear 4691 commented, "I'm the youngest of 5. I tell people when they ask about my family that I'm an only child. Haven't spoken to any of them in years. It's more peaceful this way." Our next story is, "The till is short $10. Back when I was a teenager, I worked in a pro shop and occasionally needed to close the shop down at night, which included counting the till and delivering it to the golf pro who lived down the street. The first time I closed the till was short $10 and I was mortified. It wasn't my first time being responsible for a till, but it still isn't a good look for the one closing. I delivered the till to the golf pro and said it was short $10 and I have no idea why. He was kind and said it's no big deal, happens to everyone and so on. We didn't balance the till between shifts and we all shared one, so the problem could have occurred hours before I even started. Next time I closed, $10 short again. Same discussion. This time I'm profusely saying I didn't take anything. The pro said he believed me and said he knew it wasn't me. At first I figured because he trusted me, to be honest, but then my mind got to thinking. Both nights the same person worked before me. Next time that happened and I closed, $10 short again. At that point, I don't think it happened again because the pro took care of it. The person taking the money was only doing it on days where I closed after him. I'm not a petty person, but I think I passive-aggressively and subconsciously took charge. I didn't see him much until we were adults, but I still called him a childish nickname that wasn't very flattering or adult-like. Didn't think anything of it until he kinda gave me a stink eye when I called it to him in front of other peers. My wife gave me crap about it. Wife goes, "Why do you still call him that?" And I say, "I don't know, that's his name." "No, it isn't. Can't you tell it bothers him when you do that?" And I say, "Yeah, I guess so." I came to the realization I'm doing it because he screwed me over on stealing from the till. He's a jerk anyway, so I don't feel bad, but now I get to spend the rest of my interactions with him knowing the name bothers him, and I'll do it at an increasing volume no matter where I see him. The minor inconvenience this causes him lives rent-free in my head. Freak you, Nathan. Well, it sounds like he's probably moved on and you haven't, so I guess if it makes you feel any better, go for it. Your wife doesn't seem to care for it much, and neither does he, but this is your story, so do what you will. Amadan81 replied, "My father is neighbors with a wee thug that eventually attacked him one day as he was out for a walk. He thinks/thought everyone is afraid of him. His nickname is Mousy, but nobody would ever dare say it to his face. Every single time I meet him in public, I make sure to roar the name at him. In the shop, on the street, at the doctor's, doesn't matter. I ask him, very audibly, if he's attacked anyone lately. I ask him how his sister's doing. He hospitalized her years ago because she inherited something he thought he was entitled to, and he ended up in prison over it. Somehow, this scary thug turned into an absolute freaking coward. Head down when he sees me, tries to avoid me if he has the chance. I'm actually disgusted with him. Thought he would put up a bit of a fight. He just rolled over like a bench. Freak you, John Mousy Martin." Our next story is, "Spam Call Fun." I used to get spam calls for a lady named Virginia. Every day it was call after call after call for car insurance, life insurance, etc., etc., etc. Would get incredibly annoying. Did everything from talking nasty to them, banging pots or pans on the phone when it's on speaker, even farting down the phone at them. Got a call one day asking to speak with Virginia. It went like this. "Good morning, may I speak with Virginia, please?" And I say, so sorry, but Virginia passed away last week." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." "Oh, don't be. She was a total bench. We're glad she's dead." At this point, you could hear the thoughts ticking over in her brain, and she replied, "Again, I'm really sorry." "No need to apologize. She truly was an evil bench. In fact, we're throwing her a glad she's dead party and barbecue this weekend. Would you like to come?" She kind of gasped a little bit and then hung up. "Well, we need the follow-up. Did they continue to call afterwards, or did they finally get Miss Virginia on the do not call list? We need a sequel." Timothy Jor replied, "The best advice I can give for spam callers is something I've been doing for many years now and works perfectly. When they call and try to sell me something, I tell them I live abroad and I just kept my home country's number on my cell. When you live abroad, all these services provided in the country of the spam caller become instantly irrelevant. New cell service? New electricity, gas, internet, and water provider? Insurance? Nope. Sorry, I live abroad. I have all those things in my new country." They hang up the second they hear it, and it works every single time without fail. I taught that trick to everyone in my family and my coworkers, and they use it constantly. It's also a great chance to troll people, because some of them ask, "In which country do you live now?" So if I'm in a trolling mood, I tell them a faraway country like East Timor, Burundi, Burkina Faso, or Bhutan, which is insane for a European caller. There's always a baffled silence, since they usually have never even heard of that country, and they say, "Oh, that's nice," and they hang up immediately. Fun times. Our next story is, "Your prescription is ready." I work in a dental office. Years back, I had a patient who was really aggressive, and after getting dental work done, he always asked for medications with codeine. By the looks of his teeth, he was a drug addict, and we always suspected he just wanted the meds to get high. One day, he called and asked for Tylenol with codeine. The doctor was out of town, and I was not permitted to prescribe anything stronger than ibuprofen 800 milligrams, which I offered to him. The patient was infuriated by me turning him down and decided to call the office every hour to beg, and then threaten me for not giving him the pain relief he needed. After several refusals, he decided to come down to the office. We locked the door, but he shook the door and kept banging to be let in. I did not feel safe, nor did the other staff members. He eventually left out of frustration. He ended up calling back, and at some point in the conversation, he said something along the lines of, "If I don't get my prescription, you're going to regret it." At this point, we're freaking out. This guy's clearly psycho. So I devised a plan. I called him back and said, "Sorry, I was finally able to get the approval for your prescription, but I'll need you to come and pick it up." When he got here, 2 cops were waiting for him, and he was arrested. He did a year of jail time for threatening us. Turns out he had prior charges for beating someone, almost to death, in another state. I consider that revenge, although he did threaten us, and it was more like he paid the time for the crime. For sure, you served up justice for past victims, present victims, i.e. yourself, and future victims. You are doing incredible work, OP. Great job. Corgi King replied, "Why didn't your dentist drop this patient? Also, it's a rather expensive way to get something like codeine. They can get it cheap on the street." And OP replied to this, "Obviously, we dropped him after this happened. Prior to that, he was just strange, and we were just careful on what we prescribed, etc. He did give me the heebie-jeebies, but there wasn't anything definitive that would have made us cut him as a patient prior to that. If you have health insurance, Tylenol with codeine wouldn't be that expensive, but who knows?" Our next story is, "Scammed for $20, so I ruined her week." A few years ago, I, female, freshly 18, was looking for a lash kit. Found a seller on Facebook Market with a beauty professional page. The page was kinda dead, no posts and very few followers, but old and used her real, very unique name, which felt reassuring. She said she had just one kit and wasn't a regular seller. I asked why, and she said she bought it for a class she missed, so now was reselling. Fair enough. I asked 3 more times if the kit was brand new. She swore it was. We met at a mall. I was running errands, hands full, so I trusted her and didn't check the kit. Dumb move. Got home, some pieces were dirty, others missing. I was shocked, but mostly offended about being scammed by such a dumb, lazy person. Like, for frick's sake, at least try. Clean your crap and make it look new so no one finds out. I told myself it was just $20, to forget about it, but I couldn't because it wasn't about the money. It was about being evil, lying, and not even being able to do so with care. Someone could have bought her stupid used kit, but no, she had to go full sleazebag. I started digging the likes and followers from the page from where she had sold me the kit, found her real profile and saved it. I messaged her page with photos of the dirty, missing stuff, still hoping this was a dumb mix-up. She hit me with, no, it's new, without bothering to address the literal proof I sent and then blocked me. Cool, now I don't feel bad for what I'm about to do. I'm very good at stalking. It's a skill I try not to use because I tend to go into rabbit holes and it's unhealthy. But now, I started from her personal profile that I had saved. I even found out the husband had a kid from a previous marriage who went no contact, and I think I know why, because comparing the dates between his and Scammer's kids were born and the date he got divorced from his first wife, the math wasn't mathing, if you know what I mean. Next day, I commented screenshots of our convo under her closest relative's post. Is X your family member? She scammed me for 20 sad bucks. Are these the family values? I needed her to know I wasn't playing because then I messaged her real profile like, "Hi, remember me? The girl you scammed?" Apparently she was a cosmetologist, so I dragged her for selling a dirty kit, knowing these substances go near the eye and that could go so badly. I said if she didn't return the money, I'd blast her info everywhere. Her 5 Facebook profiles, 3 Instagram accounts, she had that many, her and her husband's IDs, phone numbers, car model, license plate, taxpayer numbers, workplaces, names of closest relatives, you name it, on every Facebook group she used for business. She did this a lot, and would send it to the guy's ex and stepkid too. She called me immediately, nervous, still denying everything, begged me to meet and fix it. Her husband sent angry voice notes threatening to sue. Yeah, right, over $20. I agreed to meeting with the scammer again the next day. She showed up late, brought some angry teen girl, niece maybe, looking daggers at me and a huge muscular dude who I thought was supposed to intimidate me, but was actually the nicest. I got my money, deleted the comments, blocked her 5 profiles, and peaced out. Justice served. All of this over $20 in a dirty makeup kit. It's amazing the lengths that people will go to get revenge. I'm still here for it, though. I love it. Positive Mistake replied, "Talk about turning a $20 scam into a masterclass in targeted digital warfare. She definitely learned that some dumb, lazy people have very sharp, highly motivated friends." And Kelzer66 replied, "Right? Never underestimate someone's dedication to petty revenge. She probably thought $20 was small enough to get away with, but picked the wrong person to mess with." Our next story is Petty Revenge Against Boss/Company Owner. Allow me to preface this by saying it happened 48 hours ago, and outcomes are not fully developed as yet, but it will definitely be coming. I work as a cleaner, and due to my experience and skills, I'm employed and paid higher than most team members. I clean car showrooms and display homes for luxury elite clients, and do so very well. Problem with this is the owner of my company has made it very clear he doesn't like me personally, and has gone out of his way to try and get me to quit or get fired. So 2 nights ago, I was cleaning the local Tesla dealership, and the boss had sent out a supervisor to carry out some QM, quality management. The issue here is it's the boss saying it, and not the client. So fast forward to the supervisor arriving, walking around the site, complimenting me on my job and standards. The supervisor then speaks to the dealership manager about the complaints. The dealership manager then approached me about my boss asking what the deal is. I remained impartial and professional and told him, "I don't know what the issue is, but we appear to not see eye to eye on a lot of things." This prompted the dealership manager to then say he will contact my boss directly to ask him to lay me off, then proceeded to ask if I would become a dealership employee directly alongside my salary job. I received a call from my owner/boss being apologetic and asked me to not take the offer in exchange for a pay raise, as they can't afford to lose the elite clientele. I did the vocal equivalent of leaving him on red, saying, quote, "It's an interesting offer, and I have a lot to think about. I'm gonna let it play out for a few days while I consult my union representative for advice. As I'm employed full-time, I have quite a few protections in case this goes south." So my satisfaction, petty revenge, comes from the fact that this boss is pulling hair out from stress on my answer. Yeah, leave him on the hook, stress him out. It's clear that he doesn't care for you much, so you don't owe him anything. Do it. Him Socks replied, Based on your comments, you take a side job for Tesla. Then you actually bring popcorn and watch as the world burns down at the cleaning business when they lose the Tesla contract. Finally, you bask in your newfound wealth with the protection of the union contract. And OP replied to this, "Doesn't quite work like that in this instance. I'd be hired as a cleaning employee, but directly for Tesla, or even in a subcontracting capacity, and ideally keep my salaried job alongside. The cleaning labor at that site is 10 hours, hardly sustainable. I'm honestly considering negotiating my current employment status upwards, potentially to gain a middle management status, leading hand, team liaison, and the likes, without overextending my hand and pushing an already fine limit." Our next story is, "Sure, here's your prescription." Cross-posted on malicious compliance, was told it fit here better. This was several years ago. I worked at a retail pharmacy with a drive-thru. Everyone hated the drive-thru. It was 2 lanes, 1 person manning it, and was almost constantly busy. Besides that, people were horribly rude. I had one guy who would ask for his receipt, then crumple it up and throw it back through the window. People also don't understand how pharmacy works. That's fine, they don't do the job, but would just lash out at us for things completely out of our control, no matter how we tried to explain or help. Anyway, I was doing the drive-thru. It was crazy busy and I was constantly running around grabbing prescriptions, answering 2 phones, and sending drugs out with little to no help. Super stressful. Well, this lady pulls up in the second lane, losing her crap. It's been a while, so I don't remember what it was about. I stayed calm and was very polite, but she was frustrated and screaming at me through the phone. Now, you know those little boxes that come down at the bank drive-thru? Or the tubes? We had a similar system. The first lane we had the window, the further lane we had the box. From inside, we could set the height that the box stops at. Truck for taller car/higher windows, car for average height windows. She pulled up in a normal sedan. I finished her transaction and told her I was sending her meds out, then set the phone down. I could still hear her screaming through the window from across the first lane, so I hit truck and sent the box out to her. It was so satisfying to see her get a little humbled when she had to straight up get out of her car to reach her meds. P.S. Please, just be nice to people. It's not hard. The people who are nice made my day so much better. It does make a difference between being neutral and being kind. Absolutely, it takes so much more effort and energy and precognition, quite frankly, to be vicious and mean and cruel for absolutely no reason. Please, practice kindness. Ophi's got it nailed here. Saving Surround 211 replied, "That last sentence hits so hard. I worked as a cashier for a while, and let me tell you, the neutral people fade out of memory, but the nice ones, I remembered names, orders, random fun facts, and what we talked about last. I'd remember the one girl who always forgot to scan her app, so I'd remind her. The guy that always got one portion of his meal on the side. The group that came from work together and never wanted the receipt. I remember them all fondly. I'd have wonderful mini conversations with regulars and random nice customers, and it made my day so much more bearable. The neutral ones weren't bad, they just didn't leave any impact. Also, when the nice ones had problems, I enjoyed helping them out and making their experience better because they were so nice. I went the extra mile several times for nice customers, even when I didn't need or have to. I do my best to be just as nice whenever I interact with retail and restaurant employees." Our next story is, "An impatient customer wastes his time." Many years ago, I worked at a grocery store. I usually wound up working the closing shift, as that was easiest for me anyways. One night, a concert was in town, but the idiot manager didn't schedule any extra help, so it was just me and the closing assistant manager. They had a strict policy for when we had to clock out by after our shift. The leeway was 10 minutes. It was getting to the end of my shift, so I had to close down my lane and help the last few customers. So I tell the customer in the back of my line they can stay, but they're the last person, and put up a close sign while turning off the light. Unfortunately, that massively backed up the assistant manager's lane. Cue the impatient man. This guy comes over and starts unloading things as I'm helping the last customer I have. I tell him, "Hey, I'm shutting down, I can't take you." It's not like he had a packet of gum, he had half a cart's worth of stuff, and he just says, "That line is too long, I'll be quick." To which I say, "I can't help you." He ignores me and continues to unload his groceries on the belt. After I finish my customer, I open the register, take out my cash drawer, and head to count it down. He sees this and goes, "Wait, where are you going?" To which I said, "I told you, I was shutting down." I quickly count down my till, only to see him just leaving the lane with his repacked cart as he gets back into line. Never heard anything after, so if he complained, the AM probably just told him it was his fault. Yeah, I don't really think this is malicious compliance or pro-revenge. You're just doing your job, you know? You gave him the warning that this was your last customer. You put up a sign. That's really all that you can do. So if he wants to unload his things, you can do it. I'm just not going to serve you. Simple as that. Original Charity 817 replied, "Sir, if you're willing to pay me overtime rates to remain open for you, I will. Otherwise, you can stick your own poor time management up your butt and get in the other line." Our next story is Filthy AirBnB and Arrogant Host. This was quite a few years ago. We went to our first Airbnb and arrived late in the evening. The facilities were horribly dirty. In the bathroom, across from the toilet was what looked like vomit on the wall. There was old food in the kitchen and refrigerator. There were dirty fingerprints all over the cupboards, fridge, stove, etc. The bed was unmade and the sheets looked used. The second bed frame squeaked loudly every time you moved, so bad that I had to put the mattress on the floor to sleep. We complained to the host and she said that she pays a cleaning service to do that and grudgingly brought over new sheets and towels. When we complained about the vomit, she said it was a paint stain, which it wasn't because I cleaned it up. Because it was late at night, we stayed the night, then asked for our money back as we had originally planned on staying a week. She told us that we had to cancel the booking when in fact she was supposed to. When we canceled, we found out that we were docked an extra day penalty because we had canceled early. If she had canceled, then we wouldn't receive the extra day penalty. We left the next day. When we discussed it with the host about getting a refund for the extra day, she refused, then told Airbnb that we were difficult and that she had us kicked out. We argued with Airbnb for months to no avail as they believed the host even though we had sent them pictures. Their policy was that since we canceled, we were penalized. I happened to notice that the city where the Airbnb was had an online registry of licensed secondary suites. I looked up the Airbnb address and it was an unregistered suite, which meant that it was never inspected and hadn't paid the city licensing fee. I made a complaint to the bylaw officer with details of the suite and pictures showing the rear entrance. The Airbnb host received a $2,000 fine, plus had to go through the inspection procedure for another junk of change, all for not refunding $150 for the extra day. Now, this is absolutely what this lady gets. She's a liar, she's lazy, and clearly just trying to pull one over on these people, so hardy har, you lose. TalonCard815 replied, "Airbnb sucks. Friend of mine rented an Airbnb where they used the keypad to get in. While they were gone, someone entered the house and stole all their electronics. The host basically said, 'Too bad.' They complained to Airbnb and then left a bad review. Airbnb removed the review and then banned my friend." Our next story is Terminated without warning, reported them for tax evasion. I was working a 1099 position that was bringing in around an extra $3K a month. I was able to do this job alongside my full-time job with no issues. I turned in my work on time, I attended all meetings, and even had gotten a great report from one of my clients. My job must have suspected I was doing more than one position, however. They started demanding that I check my email at least once an hour, and even set hours for me as a 1099 worker. I had to report when I was out of the office, whether for injury or something else. I pointed out how I was a 1099 contractor and that none of those things were a contractual obligation. In fact, the entire reason I took on the extra work with this company was the flexibility. They ignored this and continued to push. A few weeks ago, at nearly midnight, I received a termination email. No phone call, not even a text message. I went to log on my computer the next day and saw my credentials were invalid. I reached out to my supervisor and was told to check my personal email, if you even do that, and that was the end of it. I stewed on it for a few days before I finally did something. I reported them for misleading my position as 1099, when in fact I should have been a W-2 employee. The IRS has a ton of information on what constitutes 1099 work and what doesn't, and I met none of the criteria for 1099 work. They were doing this to avoid paying taxes on their employees and to avoid having to offer insurance, so I reported them. I would wager that this is still ongoing for them, as it's only been a few weeks. I'm not excited about potentially putting people out of work, but I'm tired of being freaked over by employers. Yeah, if they pull this on you, all bets are off. You need to report them, and hopefully, it ends up working in your favor against them, because that's just wrong. Mr. Yan 7600 replied, "My sister's former coworker did something like this. She had been terminated for a bogus reason to make room for the office manager's daughter to work during the summer. She also had printed copies of several emails that had stated that they knew they were supposed to pay certain positions overtime, but were calling them exempt. They had to pay something like $2,000 to several of their employees, plus fees to the government. Our next story is, I snitched on my colleague and almost had him fired. In my country, there's this thing where high school students can apply for a job under the summer break and work for 3 weeks, either in June, July, or August. So this isn't like your regular job, but you're still working and getting paid. In the beginning of July, I, 17-year-old female, started working for an organization that was all about getting children and youth to move around and be more active. So my job was to basically lead different kinds of activities and play with kids. Besides me, there were a bunch of other teens working with me, but I'll only be focusing on this one specific guy, 16-year-old male. I'm gonna call him Bob. Long story short, my colleagues were extremely unserious and would laugh at any given situation, no matter how unserious it was. I didn't think much about it until the beginning of thirds last week, where I had to work in a group with some people, including Bob. Now, what didn't sit right with me is that each time I said something, Bob would look over at his friends and they would just chuckle amongst themselves. I didn't think much about it since they laugh at quite literally anything and everything. I just wanted to get the job done. However, the next day, my supervisor pulled me aside to talk to me, and he told me how he had been observing the group's behavior for a while, and how he noticed that some people, Bob included, laughed whenever I said something, and he told them once when I left that he wouldn't hesitate to fire them if he found out they laughed at me for whatever reason. He told me that all of them denied the accusation, and simply said they have a hard time staying serious, which I believed at first until Bob decided to run his mouth. A couple of days afterwards, we got inside earlier due to a storm, and we had less than 1 hour before clocking out. To unalive some time, we decided to play Mafia. For those of you who don't know, Mafia is a social deduction game where players are secretly assigned roles as either Mafia members or villagers. During the night phase, the Mafia secretly choose a player to eliminate, while special roles like the doctor can save someone and the detective can investigate a player to learn if they're Mafia. During the day phase, everyone discusses and votes to eliminate someone they suspect is in the Mafia. The game continues with alternating night and day phases until either all Mafia members are eliminated, villagers win, or the Mafia outnumber the remaining villagers. Mafia wins. So something like Among Us in real life. However, after 2 of Bob's friends got eliminated by one of the Mafias, Bob came up with the conclusion that I'm Mafia, and his reasoning was, quoting, "We're laughing at her." So I assume he probably thought I wanted to take my revenge on those guys for laughing at me by eliminating them in a game. How childish. But now I had proof that they were in fact laughing at nothing but at me. And I specifically targeted Bob only, not because his words wounded me, but because he was the only one stupid enough to say this in front of everyone, even our second supervisor. I rushed to grab my phone and I immediately texted my other supervisor, the one who threatened to fire those who laugh, about this whole situation. I even made sure to sound extra vulnerable and hurt, and not even 5 minutes after he texted me back, my second supervisor got a phone call from him, and they discussed on how they should handle the situation. Before we got to clock out, my second supervisor said how the whole organization had absolutely no tolerance for bullying, and said how he didn't appreciate people laughing at each other. That's when he made Bob apologize. Of course, his apology was everything but sincere, since I could literally see him trying not to laugh, and the whole apology speech sounded like it was written by ChatGPT. However, it did not stop there. There were around 3 days left before we'd finish with our job, so instead of firing him, which wouldn't be too much of a punishment in this scenario, they rather had him working like a slave for these last 3 days. He was even sent to different kinds of places and told to clean and tidy up the areas. Meanwhile, I literally got pulled aside by my second supervisor and told that I needed to work less. One moment that truly brought me that sense of victory and satisfaction is when my supervisor allowed me to leave work around 40 minutes early, after he told me to sit down and work less. And as I walked past a football field where the kids had a huge water balloon fight, I saw Bob with a big trash bag in his hand, picking the remaining balloon bits and pieces all by himself. Just thinking about the whole scenario makes me laugh. I'm so glad that my supervisors actually went out of their way to punish him and not just make him recite an AI-generated apology and move on with their life. I wasn't actually that offended by the constant laughter. I just wanted to let him know that if someone is quiet and more reserved, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll put up with his cheap behavior and not say anything about it. His laughter didn't bother me. I was actually only being petty and wanted him to get in trouble, because when they go low, I go lower. Husky Girl 2012 replied to this, "Good for you, and I'm dang surprised by the supervisor's attitudes, positively, obviously, because they tend to just let things slide or hide it under the rug, so to speak, but I'm really glad they did something about it, even though there was only a few days left. Moral of the story, bullies get nowhere." An OP replied to this, "Trust me, I was at least as equally shocked, especially when I got pulled aside by my supervisor and told that he was going to fire people if he found out they were laughing at me. It's low-key funny and kinda sad at the same time. The system is so broken that everyone is shocked when supervisors and those in control actually do the job they're paid to do: manage people and solve problems." Okay, everybody, that is all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and comment down below, and if you want to check out any of our other videos, click the video on the right. I got nothing else for you. I will see you all next time.